Hey guys, welcome in. In this video, I'm going to be doing one of the more requested videos from you guys down in the comments, and that is ranking all the Haydn piano sonatas. Now, as many of you already know, I love the Haydn piano sonatas, but making this video is kind of overwhelming for two main reasons. First of all, there's just a lot of Haydn piano sonatas, but the second big reason is talking about the sonatas and naming them, what number they are, is pretty confusing. He doesn't have it easy like Opus 1, Opus 2, Opus 12, Opus 13, like lots of composers. There's two main catalogs we use to talk about the Haydn sonatas. So for you nerds out there, I will be using the Hoboken system. For you non-nerds, what that basically means is if I play a sonata and you like it, which I hope happens during this video, I'll show you little samples and you'll go, ooh, I want to play that one. Just put the Hoboken number into the search engine with the name Haydn and it'll come up and you'll be able to find the pieces pretty easily that way. And we're going to jump right in here to Hoboken, Roman numeral 16, XVI number 1. And in case you're worried, almost everything in the video is going to be XVI, Roman numeral 16. That is how the Hoboken catalog works. Most of the sonata or sonata-ish pieces get thrown into Hoboken 16. So they're all going to be Hoboken 16 followed by another number. It goes like this. I really like this one. If you've already played maybe a Haydn sonata and you're sort of at this level, this is a fun one to start with. You immediately get challenged with the awkward Haydn ornament, and it also has a really fun second theme. I like the first movement more than the second and third. The second and thirds are not bad, like easy minuets to sort of get into Haydn. If it was just for the first, maybe I'd give it an A tier, but considering the whole sonata, we're just going to start off here at a solid B tier right in the middle. Up next here, we have Hoboken 16, number 2. A really fun intro, but I don't like this piece as much. It has a couple cool like dramatic stuff that sometimes Haydn sounds more like Beethoven in these sonatas than even Mozart will. So a couple things that maybe reach into the future, but overall I don't like this one as much. There's a Largo that I'm not a huge fan of, so I'm going to put this down in the C category. Not because I don't despise it, but I just don't. There's a lot more I'd rather play than this sonata. For number 3, we're back in the key of C major, and I really like how this one starts. Check this out. Once again, I'm probably more impressed by the first movement than the second and third movement, so I'm going to go ahead and put this one maybe in this C tier. I don't really like the next two movements, so we're going to put it in the C tier. It's not bad because the first movement's pretty good. I could almost put it up at the B tier with number 1, but I think C tier is fine. Now, Hoboken 16, number 4 is the first one I would say I really like the first movement, like way more than anything else you've heard so far. Check out this first movement. And later on, you get to do this classic, very, very Haydn thing. So I like this one so much, even though there is, again, unfortunately, a weaker second movement. This is actually only a 2-movement one. I might put this one all the way in the A tier because I really like to teach this piece just for the first movement. It's so good. I love getting students Haydn. I feel like it just encapsulates the fun of Haydn. You can't, or at least you shouldn't play this first movement with a serious dead face. You cannot play. So you can't do it. I haven't missed a note and I tried. So be happy. Now, XVI number 5 is unfortunately not my favorite. I'm going to go ahead and stick it down into D tier. I don't have time to go deeply into every single sonata. However, if you want to look it up, there's the number. And also, if you love this sonata and want to defend it, go down in the comments. That is great. We can all have different opinions. I'd love to hear what you guys think. If anyone loves this sonata, let me know. And number 6 is also going to join number 5 down in the D tier. Hoboken 16 number 7 is one that I really like. It's probably the one I choose to give to students as their first sonata more than any other Haydn sonata because, one, this first movement is much shorter and more manageable, but also you can tell from the first 4 measures, this is Haydn. This isn't any other composer. Now, I have haven't mentioned this yet, but some of you might know this piece or some of the ones I've already mentioned as divertimenti and not sonatas. And you're thinking, well, I thought this was called divertimenti. And you're kind of right. For the purposes of this video, I'm just going to call everything a sonata because that's what some publishers do. Just for simplicity, this is part of the complications with Haydn. He's on the forefront of sonatas. So not everything he calls sonata is in sonata form, and some of the things he calls divertimento are kind of enough in sonata form, and so that is some of the confusion. If you look at early Haydn compared to late Haydn, you'll see the form has really developed throughout his life. So again, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to call things sonatas, which is what, again, lots of the publishers are doing, just call it all sonata. But if you are confused, yes, some of these also can be referred to as divertimenti. Okay, back to number 7. The middle movement has a really cool trio I want to show you. So it goes like this. So all in all, this is a really solid B tier. It's definitely kind of pushing against the A tier because I really like it, but I think it is a great pick for just a solid Haydn sonata. Now 16 number 8, also known in the Landon system as sonata number 1, is one that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. It starts like this. I think a lot of people play this one because in some books it is the first sonata, and I think it's kind of like the standard. I want to give my student an early Haydn sonata, which it's a good one. So I think this is a really nice one to give as a first sonata. Also has a fun little, slightly awkward rhythmically minuet. And then it has the third movement. I call it the third movement because Haydn again reuses it as a first movement later on. This one is really nice. You know, I'm going to bump this up to the A tier. I'm tempted to pull down sonata number 4, but I really like it. No, I think they both belong in the A tier. So we're going to put both Hoboken 4 number 8, Hoboken 16 number 4 and number 8 into the A tier. Number 16, number 9 has a decent first movement, not a great second movement. This also has a really fun, almost like grace note-ish written out figure in it. All right, we're on the HOBXVI number 10, one probably a lot of you are familiar with. This is going to be another one of those that I really like the first movement, but the second and third movements I don't think are as strong. The third movement is fun, at least on this one. So I'm kind of between C and B. Good first movement, rest of it's a little less than good. So I might put it in the B tier. I might end up with a lot of things in the higher tier, but I do like these sonatas, so I want to put them at least in the B tier. But again, kind of a weaker second and third movements in my opinion. Now number 11 has a decent first movement. It's interesting in some ways because it has a real minor second movement. However, I wouldn't say I love either one, so we're probably going to stick this one in the C tier. I like the first movement, but not as much as the other ones. I said have a really strong first movement and the rest is weaker. I would say overall this is just a decent first movement and a decent second movement, so into the C tier. 16 number 12 is one that sometimes this will happen for my taste for Haydn where there's just a little too scalar, not enough of a tune. So I'm gonna put this one in the D tier. I actually don't like any of the 3 movements, so sorry, number 12. Number 13 is also one where I don't really love the first or second movements. However, I will admit the third movement, it's a lot of fun. It starts out with these. And then just like 8 measures later, it gets copied in minor. It also has a whole lot of concerto-like figures in the right hand, which are a lot of fun. But overall, I would say it's on the weaker side, so I'm going to also put this one in the C tier. Hoboken 16, number 14, I'm going to put down here in the D tier. Also, it's one of my favorite. The first movement just a little too dotted for my taste. The minuet starts out good. I wouldn't say I really gravitate to this as much, so we're going to have plenty for the upper tiers. So go ahead and put this one down the D tier as well. Now, before we move on, let's pick up some of these ones that kind of have weird numberings. These are ES2 and ES3. There are more than just these, but there are some that are doubtful if Haydn even composed them. And I'm of that camp just because I don't like these that much. They seem a little less grounded than lots of Haydn, so I'm going to put them in the D tier. You can look them up if you want to. I don't think they're near his best sonatas. Now, while we're at it, another odd number one is Hoboken 16 G1, which I'm kind of between B and A tier. I really like this one. It goes. This is another one that I will give to a student pretty early on if they want to play some Haydn, especially if they have some technical chops, because it is a little trickier. It has a more fleshed out development section. Like, where's the cool part start? It goes like. And then it also has a nice minuetto that goes. And then you've heard this before. We're rehashing that one. So I'm torn. I think I like it in the A tier because I wouldn't say any one of these movements are close to the very top for me, but I like all three movements. Another oddball one is D1. It's kind of unique. It's a theme and variation, one movement theme and variation. So in that sense, it's not a sonata even at all. I don't love it, but I might leave it in the C tier just for the uniqueness of it. And the last kind of weird numbering one we'll deal with is Hoboken 16 5A, which is going right into the D tier. It's kind of a fragment. Doesn't seem like a very complete sonata. And it's not very good what we do have of it. It's one of these ones that are extremely dotted and then extremely scalar. So right to the D tier. Okay, so we're back into normal numbering systems with number 18. And that is the nicest thing I want to say about this one. If you're thinking, I don't think I've ever heard this one before, you probably haven't because it's not that good. I'm joking. I know someone who watches this video, this is going to be your favorite sonata. It's not my favorite sonata. You might be thinking right now that I lied saying I like the Haydn sonatas because there's so many in the lowest tiers. But what happens is there's a few of the early ones that I really liked. And as we go along, there's more and more that I like, which is kind of natural for Haydn because they become more fleshed out pieces as we go along. So we'll get there. We'll be adding more in the higher tiers as we go along. Speaking of, we're coming across one of those hidden gems right now, number 19, D major. I found this piece in college, just kind of playing through the Haydn sonatas, looking for one I wanted to learn, and I was like, how is this piece not 1,000 times more popular? I think it gets buried for kind of two reasons. It's not one of the easy ones. It's by no means easy, so you can't just give it to someone like a teacher isn't going to give this to a student who's like, oh, you need an easy sonata. So it's hard enough it's not like teacher for lower intermediate student levels. But also, I think it gets buried because it's in D major. And D major is like Haydn's key. He has so many sonatas in D major. So this one's great, though. Very unassuming beginning. I love that spacing. Then it actually has a 3-page exposition, which is really huge for Haydn at this point. And then the development section is also awesome. It has stuff like all the way to stuff like and on top of all of that, it has a great second and third movement. The second movement goes, again, I think he's experimenting a lot with low notes in this one. Anyway, easy pick for our first S tier. It's a little difficult to find unless you look for the Hoboken number because so many Haydn sonatas that are good are also in the key of D major. So search for Hoboken XVI number 19. Check it out. Thank me later. Well, watch the rest of my video first and then do that. I wouldn't say I love number 20. I give it a lot of points for uniqueness being in a minor key first movement, which not a lot have been at this point, and also for being a little bit more of a fantasy-ish, kind of like Mozart when he writes sonatas in minor keys sometimes. But I wouldn't say I love it at the same time. So points for uniqueness, put in the C tier, but other than that, not my favorite. All right, XVI number 21. It's going to go into the B tier. I think I like the middle movement the best of the sonata. It's an Adagio. It has some nice like free scale, a group of 13. Which not saying Haydn is as a stranger to this, but a little more seems like beauty and flexibility maybe for this era. Also has a pretty cool, some nice sounds here. All right, number 22 is in the key of E major, so it's bound to be mediocre. That's kind of a joke, but I don't think there's any Haydn sonatas in E major that are going to make the S or A tier, unless I'm forgetting about one and I'll be surprised by it later, but not that I can remember. Now, Don't Let Hoboken 16, number 23, deceive you. It starts out really innocently, but it probably has by far the most virtuosic sounding stuff we've done so far. So that's your initial tempo. I mean, that's the tempo I'm picking. I don't know if that's your initial tempo. You can do whatever you want to. But then you also get an upside down Bach prelude in C major. So instead of, you get, but even at that tempo I chose earlier, which was, I think, relatively slow, it's going to be, so like I said, probably the most overtly virtuoso one we've had so far. I might stick this up here in the A tier. I don't think it has enough to jump into the S tier. It's a really nice one. I think XVI number 24 has some potential being a great one. I think this will be one of the ones where someone will leave a link down in the comments and say, but have you heard this person's version of it? And maybe I will, and then you'll convince me to bump it up. So B isn't bad. It's just not quite enough to jump up to the A tier for me. Hoboken 25 is one of these middle ones that is not quite going to make it into the middle category for me, which is sad because the first movement is kind of fun, but I don't love it. And the second movement, this little tiny minuet, is a canon where one hand is a measure behind the other hand. I love counterpoint, and I really like when composers later in the Baroque era go back and try counterpoint. It's just not my favorite example of it. So I want to like it more, but I can't feel right putting it probably above the C tier. Hoboken 1626 isn't necessarily one that I listen to a lot. However, it's kind of everything you want a Haydn sonata to be. It's really fun, has a nice minuet in the middle. Again, in some ways, it sort of like embodies what makes Haydn so good. This like kind of sonata that most people aren't going to be familiar with, but if you heard someone play it, you'd just be like, wow, that's so fun and so exciting. So this is what Haydn really, really excels at. So A tier. I feel like this next one, G major, is one that a lot of people will gravitate toward. For me, it's going to go right in the middle, but again, I can see a lot of you guys really liking this one. So if you feel like some of them are a little over dotted for your taste, definitely check out this first movement. All right, I just went away for a little bit to have a late night snack, but I am back here now. So a quick reminder to you, this is kind of a marathon to film. It's going to be a huge beast to edit. So if you wouldn't mind, take a second, comment down below, share with a few friends, help videos like this reach a wider audience. We can have more stuff like this on YouTube. So back to the ranking. Now, XVI number 28 is the first sonata we've had today that I really feel like reaches into that later Haydn feel. It begins to feel like a more fleshed out, complete piece with, I just feel there's a late Haydn feel of like size and also polishedness that this starts to show. I've never played it before, so if I was to butcher some of it for you. This is well deserving of the A tier. Let me know if any of you have played this one before and what you think of it. I think it is a really, really nice first movement that, again, starts to feel like later Haydn to me. Hoboken 16 number 29 is fine, but I don't like the first movement or second or the third movement really as much as the sonatas right around it, even less than 27, but I'm not going to order each of the tiers we go through. Number 30 is another one that I think really starts to feel a little bit more like later Haydn, and it's also kind of experimental. Haydn is no stranger to attaccas. We've already had sonatas in this list that have attaccas, which is when you go from maybe a second movement directly into a third movement. He does that quite a bit. This one is almost like a one movement sonata 50 years, 70 years before that became a normal thing. So at the end of the first movement, he goes right into an adagio after a short fermata, but the chord at the end of the first movement is unresolved. And you go right into the adagio. And then the same thing happens at the end of the adagio. You roll right into the minuet at the end. That's not very common in this era. Most sonatas kind of end a movement, maybe with a single attacca, but the fact that really every single movement goes one right into the next is kind of unique, which is sort of shows you that Haydn's a pretty experimental guy. We already talked about this a little bit, like his early sonatas compared to his late sonatas are so different because he's kind of on the cutting edge of writing all these sonatas. Oh, so I made fun of E major earlier, but I was not think about number 31. This one's also going to go into the A tier. I'm a little worried at this point that I haven't put very much in the S tier. I know some are coming up that's going to go into the S tier. Maybe I shouldn't worry yet because I know there's some in the future, but I'm wondering if I'm being a little too strict if I should be willing to bump stuff up. This is a nice one because the first two movements are a little more beautiful, obviously depending on the tempo you want to play the first movement at. I mean, you could go faster, I guess, but a little more delicate. And also the second movement. It's a really, really cool mood. And the last one's an impressive kind of flashy Haydn last movement. Okay, HOP XVY number 32 in B minor. Even if you barely know a Haydn sonata, you probably know this one. I think people tend to play this one because it's a little more like dramatic and angsty, maybe not indicative of the average Haydn sonata, but it is a very unique one that there's not a ton first movement minors. And this one does kind of just hit you in the face. It's pretty epic, and there's a lot of flashy stuff later on. It also has a really fun, intense presto third movement. So this one I think has strong enough to go all the way up to the S tier. I don't like it as much as 19, but considering nothing else is in the S tier, it's going to make it all the way to the top to the S tier. So really fun sonata. If you are someone who likes Beethoven and want to work your way back to Haydn, this is kind of a fun one for that reason. Some people have to kind of work their way into Haydn style from the front back because they're used to more classical romantic music. And if you are that, there's nothing wrong with that. You might want to start with something like this, and then you'll fall in love with older and older Haydn as you go along. Up next, we have another sonata in D major. Again, not one of the more popular ones. This one's fine. I would say the first movement is probably the strongest, and the other ones are fine. I'm going to put this one right here in the B tier. It's good, but there are three other D major sonatas I would recommend over top of it. The E minor, much like the B minor, I think is extremely popular because it brings out a different side of Haydn, more like angry and aggressive. However, the second movement is really gorgeous. G major. Up next, we have one of the most popular C major Haydn sonatas. Which I will admit, it's a lot of fun. I never understood why this is the one that gets put in a lot of intermediate anthologies. Like, people haven't played a single Haydn sonata, and then we throw this at them. And I would just say there are better sonatas to start with, like much better ones to start with. Now, that being said, I think it's an A tier. It's a great sonata. But I would just say if you're looking for something on the, hey, this is your first Haydn sonata to kind of get into the style, I don't get why we start with this one. XVI number 36 is another great minor first movement. I like the second and third movements less in this one compared to the B minor and the E minor. B tier might be a little harsh. It's probably still on A tier. However, this one is kind of more on the line between A and B. I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I was kind of giving up hope. However, how can I possibly be tired when the next sonata is? This is a great one. This is the greatest or second greatest one in D major. I love this sonata for lots of reasons. This is a very mature Haydn sonata too, where it goes to lots of places and develops and has some great oopsie, not that. And it also has a great middle movement. Another really fun one that I give the students sometimes who are like, I'm good at counting. And I'm like, well, play this because it's easy, right? It's slow. How hard can the counting be? So yes, straight up to the S tier. This is a great sonata. Okay, I'm kind of getting into dangerously late Haydn territory to do this, but I'm going to put 38 in the C tier. It's not my favorite. It's one of the ones in E flat, and E flat's one of his favorite keys, but I'm getting kind of late into sonatas to put something in the C tier because someone is going to love it out there. And for that, I'm deeply sorry. Let's move on. Now, believe it or not, I put Hoboken 16, number 39, right there with it in the C tier. But the Presto, the last movement, is a lot of fun. So that's going to bump it up to the B tier. Hoboken 16, number 40, gets some points for being unique. I mean, allegretto innocente, like an innocent allegretto. And also it's kind of in this simple form where you just do a few measures, repeat, almost like Haydn often does for his third movements, but in the first movement. Again, it gets some points for being unique in sound and character. I'm going to put in the B tier. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'm not always a huge fan of the really fast, super dotted kind of jerky ones, and that's what 41 kind of sounds like to me. Hoboken 16, number 41, sounds like to me. It's fine. Give it a listen sometime, but it's not like going to be one that I would recommend people to seek out. It's not my favorite sound. Now, Haydn isn't near as consistent with Mozart. It's writing the 3-movement sonatas. Again, he's kind of in the early development of the sonatas, but this is kind of an interesting chunk of a couple 2-movement sonatas in a row. Again, 42 is not my favorite one, unless you really want to play Here Comes the Bride, you know. And with number 43, we are unfortunately going to have our third C tier in a row. This one's fine. Now on the 44 in G minor, I might shock a lot of people and put it down into the D tier. This is kind of where we run to one of those issues I told you about with the catalog. And the Hoboken numbers have a stretch of sonatas here that are actually earlier sonatas. Again, the catalogs with Haydn are kind of weird. There's not a perfect system. We're using Hoboken because at least you know what I'm talking about when I say a Hoboken number, and you can go look it up for the most part. And it's fairly simple in that sense. But another one down low, but once again, it's because these are sort of in a weird order. And if it was just on the strength of the first movement, XVI number 45 would suffer the same fate. However, I do kind of like the second and the third movements. The second movement goes something like this. And the third movement is fast and fun, and I will totally butcher its sight reading, but something like... something like that. So it's a fun one, up to the B tier, mostly on the strength of the second and third movements. Now for XVI number 46, I want to play just a little bit of the beginning of the middle movement for you because it's such a unique sound for Haydn. And by the way, this all can be done with just one hand, and it will have to be done with one hand once the right hand enters. So you can see there's a lot of finger pedal going on to kind of create that really cool texture, obviously with no pedal. Oh, I guess I got to rank it. However, the first and third movements aren't as good, so going in the B tier. Now up next here, we kind of have a unique one. I'll show you why in just a second. XVI number 47. I'm going to stick up here in the A tier. It is composed around the year 1766. You might be asking, Why am I saying that when I haven't mentioned that for any other one? Well, Haydn reuses the same piece in E major, two of the movements for a much later sonata in 1788, I believe, in the key of F major. So he reuses them, but then also changes the key, then also adds a different first movement. I'm not a huge fan of that first movement as much as the other two movements. However, they're kind of like the same sonata. So I have 47 and then 47 kind of redone in 1788. Okay, guys, we were on the home stretch, the last 5 sonatas. And whatever numbering system you use, these are either 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, or 58, 59, 66, 61, 62. So no more of this weirdness like this one's the next one in this system, but it goes back 20 in this system. So we're going to jump in here to Hoboken, number 16, number 48. And this one doesn't have the best first movement in my opinion, and the presto also isn't my favorite. This one kind of reminds me of a return to a somewhat earlier style, but maybe a little too simplistic for me. So we're gonna put in the B tier. I think all these last 5, unless I'm forgetting something, are going to be at least in the B tier, but it's actually kind of close to the C tier, to be honest. All right, number 49 or 59 if you want to be a Landon person, it's going to go straight up to the S tier. This one's really nice. It's kind of like almost the ideal Haydn sonata. It has a really good first movement. Something like that. Then right before the recap in that first movement, there's almost like a Beethovenian searching for the key moment, like. What really takes us to the S tier is the fact that the second movement is also really good. It also has a really fun third movement, which goes So yeah, this E flat major, sometimes by the way called the little E flat, not that it is the littlest of the E flats, but relative to what's about to happen in a few sonatas here, it's the little E flat. Really, I think just kind of hits on all cylinders. All 3 movements are sort of like classic, really good Haydn movements. And now we have the best or maybe second best Haydn sonata in C major. I think this one is just so iconic. I mean, obviously the other C major that we talked about earlier is also really famous and iconic, but I think this intro is so Haydn. The first thing you hear is it just like starts out quirky from the very, very beginning. The second to last Haydn sonata is going to land right here around the A or B tier. I'm not quite sure where yet. The first movement has a super unique kind of grand sound for Haydn, so makes me want to put it in the A tier, but I think the finale is just fine, so that puts it in the B tier. So let's stick with the A tier. Oops, not the S tier. It was not supposed to go up there. It's not that good, but let's put it in the A tier. And now we come to the big E flat, which we call the big E flat because compared to the sonata we talked about today, it is big in like size, just length, but also just idea. The middle movement is like over the top dramatic. The last movement I think is actually the best movement. Like super fun and frantic and also virtuosic, right? But it really makes you wonder, like obviously Haydn was like an early sonata composer. He wrote sonatas for so many years, but it makes you wonder, like, what if he was still writing piano sonatas in 1810, in 1820? What would he have done? But I'll let you ponder the thoughts of that deep question while I go ahead and stick this right up into the S tier. So I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. We got 5 S tiers, which seems fair considering how many sonatas there are. Hopefully you can kind of see that from the list. There are some A's and some B's from those early eras too. If you do feel a little overwhelmed with the sheer number of them, maybe start with the A and B tier, the early sonatas, kind of jump into first, and then obviously if you want to listen to some great Haydn sonatas, check out the S tiers, because obviously what I picked as the S tiers are the best sonatas. Thanks for hanging out for a little bit. See you guys in the next video.